Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to chat about gambler's ruin. And the question fundamentally is, if you have a bankroll, it doesn't matter how big or small it is, what should you do if your goal is to double that bankroll before you lose it all? And it's posed as the risk of ruin. And as we begin, I wanted to share this video from YouTube, which captures the essence of what's going on here. Let's watch together. A few seconds.
Ashley, why don't you take a moment, get yourself composed, then we'll go over the rules of the game.
Are you sure you want to make this bet with your life savings?
Yeah, I'm satisfied. I want you to...
All right. Well, he's sure he wants to make that bet, and I would encourage you to watch this video if you want to see what happens. Does he make the bet? What does he bet on? And what is the outcome of the bet? I will put a link in the description to this particular video. And this is one of several that you might see. Occasionally you'll see people that come to Las Vegas and they are going to wager it all on a single bet. It might be on roulette, on red or black. It might be on a hand of blackjack or something like that. And the issue is, of course, that's very high risk. And I would never recommend that you wager something that you cannot afford to lose. So do not take your life savings and put it all on a single bet. But the problem, theoretically, of the risk of ruin can be characterized in this way. You need to double your bankroll or go bust. So you're willing to lose everything in order to double your bankroll. And you're playing an even money game. For purposes of this discussion, in this video, we're going to assume you're playing an even money game. So it could be 1-to-1 odds, such as pass or don't pass in craps. It might be red or odd or even or 1 through 18 in roulette. It might be the player wager in Bac. It might be in a no-commission Baccarat game. It might be the banker wager as well. So those are the two main bets available in Baccarat. Blackjack is not quite a 1-to-1 game. It typically is, but you may split, you may double down, you may get 3-to-2 if you get a natural. So it doesn't quite fit into the model that we're looking at for this video, but the estimates for blackjack will be pretty close to what you see here in terms of the results. And the first question that can be posed for this is, how should you wager? If you need to double your bankroll or go bust, how should you wager? That's really the question. Should I put it all out at once, like on the video that we just looked at? Or should I slow play it and break down my bankroll into a lot of units and just kind of grind it out? What's best for me if I want to double my bankroll? And the follow-up question to this is, what's your chance of success and failure? And if you fail, that's called the risk of ruin. What is your risk of ruin? What's the chance that you'll lose everything in an attempt to double up? Your responses might be, well, which game should I play? What's the house advantage in that game? And how much is my bankroll? And those are reasonable questions to ask someone that says, well, how should you play? You know, oftentimes questions that ask you, hey, what would you do or what should you do? Follow-up questions are needed. Responses are needed first before you can really formulate a response. So these are reasonable questions. What's the house advantage of the game I'm being asked to play? Or is it up to me? And then how much is the bankroll I need to double? Or is that also up to me? And the actual problem of risk of ruin is actually quite laborious if you were to do it by hand. For example, let me just give one example. Consider craps, where I have 100 units and I just decide to wager 1 unit, and I'm going to keep betting 1 unit on the pass line, winning or losing 1 unit every time until I either get to 200 or I drop all the way to 0 and I lose everything. Well, as you might imagine, I'm going to win a unit, lose a unit, win a unit, win a unit, lose a unit, win a unit, lose a unit, lose another unit. You know, there are lots of possibilities where I'm just going up or down by 1 each time, and what we would call a random walk. And my probability of moving up is slightly less than 50% because of the house advantage, and my probability of moving down a unit is slightly greater than 50%. But nevertheless, it's some sort of a random walk that will take a long time and a large number of bets before I either reach plus 100, so I've doubled my bankroll, or minus 100, and I've lost everything because I'm only wagering one per play. So the way I approach this is to do a computer simulation and let the computer do the work for us. So I coded software that just ran this at a high speed, It was coded in Fortran, and I was able to code the software so that I can tell the software what is the house advantage that I'm interested in, and what is the bankroll in units that I'm interested in doubling. And so it's able to consider various types of bankrolls of which I'm wagering 1 unit, and also various house advantages. And let's take a look at these results. And I think you'll find them interesting. And let me get rid of myself here so that we can see the entire display. And so one of the things you can see here right away is that there's a bunch of different curves. And let me tell you what these axes are. So the vertical axis here, this is 100%. And these tick marks are just 90%, 80%, 70%, all the way down to 0%. And the horizontal lines coming across are at each of these 10% marks. On the horizontal axis, this is my bankroll that I'm trying to double. And this plot here assumes I'm wagering 1 unit on every bet. So this is 100 units I would need to double, 90 units, 80 units, 70 units, all the way back down to 0 units. And let's just look at one of these curves, and let's start with the top curve here, the dark red curve. This happens to be roulette. So if you put everything on a bet such as red or even, and you only made 1 wager, so your bankroll was 1 unit and you wanted to double that, your risk of ruin would be a little bit over 50%. Be right around 52.6% would be your chance of losing that if you put it all on one wager. And your chance of winning would be just 1 minus that. So you would have about a 47.4% chance of doubling. And what you see is, if you are playing a game that has a house advantage, for example, 5.26% in roulette, this red line is about 3% house advantage. This next kind of light orange line would be the pass line in craps at 1.41%. This yellow line would represent something like the player or the banker in roulette at about 1.1%. But in each of these, what you can see is that your risk of ruin, the longer you play, the higher is your bankroll in units you're trying to double, your risk of ruin goes up on each of these. And that's because the house advantage is grinding you down. And so, for example, if I need to double 100 units and I choose to bet those 1 unit at a time, you can see that for roulette, I have almost a 100% risk of ruin. I have almost no chance of doubling. It's almost nearly 100% chance that I will lose everything before I double. On the other hand, if you look down at the light orange and the yellow curves, you'll see that my risk of ruin is less than 100%, but it's still pretty high. If I'm playing craps, it might be around 94%, and if I'm playing Baccarat, it might be around 90%, but still, that's a 90% chance that I'll lose everything before I double. On the other hand, if you look at the horizontal curve down here, this would be a game with no house advantage, exactly 50-50. And so it doesn't matter in this game if I put it all on 1 spin or 1 play, or whether I choose to draw it out. My chance of doubling before losing it all is 50% on a game that has no house advantage, which is this dashed black line. And then down below, you see something interesting. These are games where I have the advantage. So, for example, this light green line would represent something like Blackjack, where I'm a card counter. And so I have an advantage over the house. This would be a 1% advantage. And this dark green line down here would be a 2% advantage. For example, if I was back counting a blackjack game and only making a wager where I had the advantage, I might see something like this. And the point here is, once you have the advantage, you actually want to stretch things out, because if I'm a card counter in blackjack and I'm trying to double my 100 unit bankroll, I have maybe only about an 11% chance of ruin. Here you can see this is about 11%. And therefore, I have about an 89% chance of succeeding in doubling my bankroll. And that's because it's actually helpful for me to stretch out my wagers. On the other hand, if I put it all on a single bet in blackjack, you can see here that I have about a 49.5% chance of losing everything. But my chance of losing everything continues to go down the longer I stretch things out. And so the summary of risk of ruin, if we were to summarize this in terms of what we've learned, the summary is, if you're playing a game that has a house advantage, so the house has the advantage against you, then if you want to double your bankroll, it's actually best to put it all on a single spin or a single play and just go for it. Just like that gentleman in the video we saw. If you're trying to double your bankroll in a game that has a house advantage, like roulette, which he was playing, you actually should put it all down on one single spin or one single play. On the other hand, as you can see in the curves down below the dotted line here, if you have the advantage, for example, you're a card counter in blackjack, then the opposite is true. You actually want to stretch out your play as long as possible and let that advantage work for you so that you can minimize your risk of ruin. Again, please don't wager anything more than you can afford to lose. It is very important that gambling not become a problem for anyone. And I would hope that anyone watching this video would please take this warning seriously. Please don't wager more than you can afford to lose. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.